Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Facilities in Focus. My name is Mackenna Moralez, and I am the Associate Editor with FacilitiesNet and your host of this very podcast. It is always a joy to be able to join you on your journey throughout the internet, but I am very excited about today's guest, and it's kind of a big deal because I have three friends joining me. In studio is Sara Porter from Healthy Schools Campaign, along with Rob Christlieb and Brian Martin from Chicago Public Schools. Really quick, can you all just introduce yourselves? Sara, do you want to go first?
Hi, McKenna. Thank you so much for having me today. My name is Sara Porter. I'm the Vice President of External Affairs at Healthy Schools Campaign and the Director of the Healthy Green Schools and Colleges program.
Perfect. And then Rob, how about you?
Good morning. My name is Rob Christlieb. I'm the Executive Director of Facility Operations for Chicago Public Schools. I've been in this role for about 6 years now and have been with the district for a total of about 13 and a half. And my basic upbringing is construction management, development, and program management. So I'm kind of in a unique position here as an operations director, but bring a different set of tools to this endeavor.
Very nice. And then last but not least, Brian, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, McKenna. I appreciate you having me here. Brian Martin, I'm a Deputy Program Director with the Chicago Public Schools PMO office. I've been with CPS for about 16, 17 years now. Right now as Deputy Program Director, been in that position about 6 or 7 years, supporting on both the facilities and capital side related to program management, project management, and supporting Rob and his team in many of the different projects and programs that they've established and built up over the years.
Very nice. So I have gathered you all here today to discuss about the certification that you got earlier this year. So earlier this year, Chicago Public Schools achieved gold certification under the Healthy Green Schools and Colleges standard, becoming the first school district in the nation to be awarded this prestigious recognition. But Sara, could you just tell us a little bit about the Healthy Schools campaign and what this new certification entails?
Absolutely. Healthy Schools Campaign is a nonprofit organization. We are based in Chicago, but we do work across the country with public K-12 school districts. Our mission is simple. We are really looking to support schools and making sure that they are places where students can learn and thrive, all students. And we have a very strong focus on supporting schools and communities that are traditionally underserved, underprivileged, underinvested, underrepresented. And we were based on the fact that healthy kids are better learners. So we try to help take a look at all the different factors that go into creating a healthy school environment. We have programs around promoting healthy, less processed school meals. We have a program in Chicago that helps build these incredible schoolyards that also have this amazing green stormwater infrastructure to help alleviate flooding in the neighborhoods. We have a huge program that works on expanding school Medicaid and access to mental and behavioral health services, many different things. And Healthy Green Schools and Colleges is just one of our many different programs. Many of those programs we get to partner with Chicago Public Schools on. And as I said, we also work with school districts, big and small, across the country. So we're sort of a small but mighty organization. And at the core, we're an advocacy organization. So through these different programs, we are engaging all the time with school stakeholders on the ground in buildings every day, whether they're school facility professionals or school food service professionals, teachers, principals, and the lessons that we are learning from folks in schools, we try to translate into policy recommendations. And so sometimes that might mean a school district policy, sometimes it's state legislation or federal legislation, but we're really working towards working on helping make sure that there are good, sound policies in place to support students.
That's so nice. I feel like every school should be a part of something like that.
That would be amazing. We're working on it. And this particular program, Healthy Green Schools and Colleges, is our program that is really focused on facilities management. It's about promoting and protecting the health of all of the people in the spaces, as well as the health of the environment. It's one of our newest programs. It hasn't been around for too long, but the core of it really is a standard for healthy, sustainable facilities management practices. So it's not something for like one individual school building. It's not a training for an individual person. It's a standard that an entire school district seeks to meet and adopt. And it covers more or less all the things that fall within the purview of a school facilities director. So everything from cleaning, sanitizing, disinfecting, floor care, to integrated pest management, HVAC maintenance, IEQ monitoring, all of those things. It's not about capital investments or renovations. It's about looking at day-to-day operations, and with a really strong focus on health and sustainability, then, it sort of sets the bar of what all those things would look like. And then our program has all kinds of tools and resources to help school districts kind of assess how their current operations compare to that standard, and then make adjustments or additions or tweaks as they go along, working towards meeting that standard. And then ultimately, when they're ready, they can submit all the documentation and earn a certification under that standard, which creates this really cool opportunity for positive recognition for the school district. That sort of third-party validation that says you indeed have met this standard and have really committed to health and sustainability and protecting your students and staff and the environment. And my favorite part about it is that recognition, because the work of these teams is so incredibly important, but doesn't get nearly enough respect or recognition. And it deserves it. So we're trying to create that opportunity.
Right. And especially with such large public school districts, I feel like urban schools tend to get a bad reputation, and I don't think it's fair, because there are school districts like Chicago that are putting in the work to make it a healthy and safe place for kids to be. So, what interested Chicago Public Schools in obtaining this certification? What was that process like?
I guess I'll jump in and answer that one. So a couple of years ago now, we were invited out to the Healthy Green Schools and Colleges summer conference out in California. And that was kind of, Sara actually reached out to us and invited us to come out. And initially, we were like, oh, okay, well, what can we do here? How can we do this? Myself and the executive director of Capital went out to the program and got introduced to the Healthy Green Schools and College program. And it was I guess it was really easy for us to say, hey, we're going to go out here and take a look, listen to what they're saying and why they're saying it, because we've had such a long history with Healthy Schools campaign, and with the programs that I've personally worked on for the last 10 years, the Space to Grow program, which are very important programs for us. And she didn't mention, but we have 37 playgrounds that will be completed this year as part of this process, and storing over millions of gallons of water. So great, successful program, great partnership. And so it was very easy for us to say, hey, you've got something else going, we'll be interested in at least taking a look at it. And that process, the first thing they did was they made us do homework. And that homework was that, going through and analyzing where we're at, what we're doing, vis-a-vis the standards that they had in place. And, I'm not a big fan of homework, but it was encouraging when I didn't complete that homework, because I went through and said, hey, where are we at? How close are we to these standards? Where are we in the ballpark? Those type of things. And we actually scored pretty high, I think, for an initial survey. I think we were at like 44 points. And what I realized very quickly was that Chicago Public Schools does a lot of these things. We are invested and have, either written or non-written rules about this when it comes to, air quality, water quality. We have programs that are in place that we've been working on and developing across the district. our training program. We just, as we were working on this Healthy Green Schools campaign with them on this, we were actually looking at bringing our custodians in-house. We are just in the process. After we started this program, we brought the cleaning equipment and the cleaning supplies in-house. So, and then eventually about a year into the program, we brought the custodians last year, we brought the custodians into management. We deprivatized our program with Aramark and decided to manage our own custodians. So being in control of the supplies, the equipment, and the custodial program and their training program gave us, a whole opportunity to take a look at what Healthy Green Schools was talking about and what they wanted, and allowed us to say, hey, we're reinventing this whole process of managing this in-house. We had to already develop all these SOPs, which we had already been working on to a degree with Rebecca. And so what we did is like, hey, we can just take a step back, re-look at everything that's in this program, and then kind of say, how does our stuff that we're doing already align with what they want us to do? And then how do we put the finer points on that of what do we change, how do we change, and what wording do we put in, and how do we develop these policies and procedures that make sense for our team in order for us to meet these requirements. And I think that was a big lift for us, and it actually spent the first year of our program or working through the certification of this program. We were just basically looking at where were we, where were they, what do we need to do, and how do we need to do it. And the primary caveat that was driving all of this for us was we're not going to purchase any points. If we can't make the points with no cost or low cost, then we were going to avoid those points. It's just due to our budget situation, we didn't have the ability to go out and do a MAT program or some of the other stuff that we looked at, but we did have the ability to have processes and procedures put in place that were reflective of the Healthy Green Schools and Colleges program, and that allowed us to really hit the ground running and saying, okay, here's our target, this is what we're already doing, this is how we already do it, what do we need to do to put the fine points on it to score the points, to basically initiate this change management within our own structure, and to make people understand what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how we were going to do it. So it was interested for us, and I should say that this process was very interesting for us because of the sheer fact that we're talking about green schools and sustainability. Anybody that's been listening to Chicago Public Schools over the last year and a half has known that our teachers union is very interested in green and sustainable buildings. And this was a way for us to kind of pick what we were going to do and how we were going to do it, but follow a national example and national leadership on something like this, and to get, basically have us follow somebody else's lead in regards to this. And this goes back to one of the things I know most about. I've learned the most about Chicago Public Schools is that no one really trusts us, but they do trust third parties that are important members of society or have a group, ASHRAE, those type of things, Healthy Green Schools, the Healthy Schools Challenge. All those are third parties that represent good high standards. And if CPS follows those standards, we're not setting the standards, we're merely following them. And that allows us to kind of, use best management practices and say, we're not making this stuff up. We're actually following somebody else's recommendation, and it's a best management practice. And so that's really helped us in dealing with the teachers union and with our administration, is that, hey, these are things that we're doing that are good, and that they're sustainable, and that they are best management practices moving forward. And so all those things coming together, along with us taking over management of our custodial program in-house, allowed us to really decide what we're going to do, when we're going to do it, and how we're going to do it. And that really allowed my team the opportunity to take their existing programs and blend them in with Healthy Green Schools and have a great outcome from it.
Is there anything you would like to add, Brian?
No, I think, Rob really summed it up pretty well. And one thing that he did mention, CPS has really been on a transition for the last number of years, moving from kind of an external IFM model into an internal in-house management model. And through that, we've gone through a number of different strategies and challenges, and really have been working to align and standardize a lot of what we're doing here at Chicago Public Schools. So when Rob had come across a Healthy Green School Standard, it was really kind of a perfect fit with what we've already been kind of working on with teams. And then just allowed it to elevate what we were doing and realign that with a national standard. So it was kind of like the perfect timing and perfect fit for Chicago Public Schools to institute this. And it really worked out well.
How long did it take to get the certification?
It took us about a year from start to finish to go through the certification. We were already on the path of establishing a lot of our standard operating procedures. We had established a SOP program about a year prior to starting Healthy Green Schools. And that really allowed us to already start having a lot of these discussions with teams about how and what we're doing in the field related to the work, and what are those strategies and what are those particular elements that we're using in order to implement those processes. So that really gave us a heads up on being able to then start to drill into some of these Healthy Green School standards and some of the requirements that they have, and it furthers those discussions with our teams in the field. So with that being said, we were able to move pretty quickly through that standard. And also, we established a pretty good commitment to that program from the get-go. I mean, Rob was gung-ho and very supportive right from the start, and then very consistent about it throughout the entire duration of the program, not just with us, but with also all of the field teams on a consistent basis each week, which was really kind of a requirement in order for everyone to buy into it.
Right. We mentioned a little bit of getting the trust and transparency from teachers or even students. How did you go about that during this process?
Well, I would say that we focused not so much on the teachers and the students to start with, but we focused on our own employees and our own management staff, and with the idea that, regardless of anything else inside the Healthy Green Schools and College program, it's about making work safe, right? It's about having the right equipment. It's about having the equipment that doesn't blow your eardrums out. It's about the equipment that doesn't create more air quality issues than you started with. It's about, ergonomically correct ways of doing things, making sure that you're properly trained, and that there's processes and procedures in place for our staff to work their way through these issues, and they don't have to invent the wheel themselves, but they know that the gist of what we're trying to do is making and keeping everybody safe. Now, as we move forward with the teachers, I think, as I mentioned earlier, CT was very interested in a green, sustainable program. And while I think they begrudgingly gave us credit for what we're doing, they are interested in what we're doing, and they are interested in supporting us. And we're, working on a committee with them to further green activities. But I think this is a great basis and a great understanding for us to a good starting spot, right? Like, here's a third party. Here's all these things that are important in operating a school district. Here's how CPS responds to those. Here's the things that we're not doing, and here's the things that we would like to do. Right. And I think that transparent conversation is so important because it's not us making up these standards. It's a third party doing it. And it's like, how do we meet these standards, and do these standards seem reasonable as a best management practice, in which I think they do. And if you compare what we do and the gold standard and any of the certification levels, it's all designed for keeping people healthy and safe and having a good, productive environment for learning and working. And that's key for us.
Is the transparency aspect, is that something that Chicago Public Schools just took on? Or Sara, do you offer any guidance with that, with the Healthy School campaigns?
I mean, I think it's certainly both things, and that's part of, everything that Rob has been saying about having this outside validation is always really helpful. we're always very much interested in transparency and accountability with public schools. It's so important for everybody. And when we have school districts go through this process, we have separate certification reviewers actually go through all that documentation. It's not me. We want to make sure that like they're the right experts going through and then ultimately deciding, yep, they are in compliance. They've shown all this documentation and they do indeed meet the standard. And it's also a certification they have to keep valid. So it's not an award you win on one day and then kind of don't think about it again. There is annual sort of monitoring that happens to make sure that the district continues to meet that standard. So I think those elements of transparency and accountability are built into the program, and I know are also very, very important to Chicago Public Schools. And in addition to that, just going back to the question about parents and teachers and students, we're almost even just kind of at the beginning in some ways of sharing information, because we issued the certification in May. It was right at the end of the school year. And we had a press conference and we got a nice article in the Sun-Times, and we've been we've been talking about it, and here we are today. But with the back to school season coming up, it'll be another opportunity for us to continue to talk about this achievement from CPS and make sure it's such a huge district. It takes time to roll that information out, to everyone that wants it and needs it. And so it's certainly not a secret by any measure, but I think there's more communication channels that we've got an eye on for the back to school season, so that we can continue to promote and celebrate this achievement and make sure that students and teachers and parents and nurses know about it. So it's pretty exciting.
Right. And Chicago really is a huge district. It's the third largest city in the country, right?
Fourth largest district in the country by population, third largest by square footage.
Mm-hmm.
I said that we couldn't swear on the podcast, but just imagine me doing it right now. But I'm sure that felt like such a daunting task or challenge to take on. What were some challenges that you ran into that you could advise?
We touched a little bit on initially just the engagement from teams, right? And getting teams to buy into the program. It's kind of it's a project that's a slow start, in the sense that people really kind of struggle to wrap their heads around what's trying to be done and really what the real why behind it and the purpose. And on top of everything else that teams are trying to do in the field related to their regular work requirements. So that challenge was met, and we were able to overcome it pretty quickly, again, because of the commitment from leadership and the middle management, and then ultimately getting commitment from field teams. I think one reason, though, also why we were able to get commitment, and the way that it's structured, the standard itself, is it really requires, or at least you should go about it this way, it really requires input from everyone, from the leadership down to the field teams. So we were having meetings on every single standard element, line by line meetings. There's over 300 lines of standard within Healthy Green School Standard, and going through, how do we currently address this particular item? Are we meeting this item? If we're not meeting this item, then what do we need to do in order to meet it? And then really coming up with ideas from teams in the field who actually carry this work out, and get their feedback and buy-in and understanding. And they really help to create a lot of the standards and specific processes or revisions to processes we've already had in order for us to meet those particular elements of the standard. So that was, one challenge. But again, I think once people found that they can have real involvement in this and be a part of it and actually create it, it really got everyone kind of excited about it. And especially when we're capturing it, tracking it on paper, and having an entire catalog that we created of all these processes that they can use moving forward, it really kind of ignited a fire amongst teams that we can really make an impact and make change. So teams bought into it relatively quickly in that sense. Just another quick challenge, there's some difficult parts in the standard to meet. Some of them require, obviously some dollars to implement, which were some that we just weren't able to tackle. Some of them just require a lot of like program structure change in means by which you're able to capture data and report out on data and documentation. One being having all of your supplies, custodial supplies, meet green seal requirements. It really required us to look at our current strategy and standard in the way in which we procure supplies, but then also how do we capture and monitor all the data related to those supplies? We talked about Chicago Public Schools being the third largest by size in the nation. So you can imagine, the volume of supplies and the types of supplies that we need to procure on a weekly, monthly, and annual basis. Well, that data, we really needed to look at a different way in which we were able to structure that data so that we can more effectively report out on the requirements that Healthy Green School has, and then also make adjustments to the standard, and then meet with our vendors to make sure they understood the standard and what products they could and what products they could not sell to our schools to make sure we were in alignment. So those are, some of the challenges that we faced, along with many others. But again, it just really kind of required a commitment from all levels in order to kind of push through some of those hurdles that we faced.
Mm-hmm.
Mackenna, if I could add something to that, I think one of the biggest things that happened for our team was that we hosted the Healthy Green Schools and Colleges summer retreat last summer. So for 2 days, we had folks here in Chicago and we gave them tours of our facilities. We involved about 25 of our senior leaders and doers in the district in helping to present what CPS does and how we do it. And I think one of the things that I came away most impressed with about that presentation was that folks really took pride in what they were doing and how they were doing it and why they were doing it. And in fact, it actually just all that good feelings about what you did and how innovative we are and how we're solving problems. Folks were able to tell their story, and they realized that, and telling their story and the story of Chicago Public Schools, that we were actually very innovative and very thoughtful about what we do and how we do it. And we are cutting edge in many ways. We have many issues, but we're cutting edge in many ways. And I think the team kind of really took that as a shot in the arm of, wow, we're really out there doing good stuff, and we're leading, we're thought leaders in the industry, right? And we're trying things. And that was July of last year, a year ago. And I think going into the school year, and as we, basically hit the ground running with our certification process, everybody was very excited about it and very committed to proving that we were a good school district and that we had a lot of great programs. And so that I think that, those folks being engaged and telling their story last summer allowed them to really pick up the ball and run with it during the school year when we were actually going through the certification process. And that helped them to understand what we were doing, what we wanted to do, and why we were doing it. And that, that level of enthusiasm just carries through in getting the work done. And so I think that was, to me, that was a great thing for us. We got to highlight what we do and how we do it. And it gave my team a sense of pride and accomplishment because they were basically talking to 150 people from across the country that were facility managers and getting these kind of questions that are like, wow, this is awesome what you guys are doing. So I thought that was very helpful for us in kind of cementing our team's commitment to this and understanding of why it's so important.
Right.
Yeah, one other thing. I'm sorry, I just wanted to add real quick. One other thing that we had too is we assigned a really solid project manager to really oversee the carrying out this overall initiative. It's not something that you can just roll out and it automatically happens, or teams are going to just kind of do this on the side and make it happen, at least for a district of our size. But Rebecca Belfisi, who wasn't able to be on the podcast today, was really the leader in the field, supporting and pulling teams through this entire process, and really being able to help keep everything organized. And I think it's a really critical component to anyone who's going to be launching or implementing the Healthy Green School Standard, especially for those who have a large district. It's it's really a requirement to have a really solid project manager who's able to keep things organized. There's lots of documentation. There's lots and lots of meetings, and some challenging meetings of, really having difficult conversations with teams as you're working through all these processes. And she was just fantastic in being able to carry that out and not only be tough and hold teams accountable, but also be supportive in helping teams where she can, and, really just helping to, create that synergy between everyone and the many different groups that really had to work on this. So it was a really important factor.
I think that is a really important thing to add, but it seems like everybody was really enthusiastic and excited to take on this challenge. And I don't know, I feel like when a group of workers have a challenge or something like that, it makes them like their job a little bit more too. Did you see that from the employees?
I would say definitely. Yeah. I mean, after last summer and the fact that they were able to tell their story and they realized that their story was a good story and that they are a hardworking organization when they're able to talk with, their peers, I think that was incredibly helpful and really got the team going in the right direction and had them, focused on what we really wanted to do because of who we are and what we do.
Yeah, right. I think it really gives purpose to what they're doing, right? So they're not just doing it just to check the box off on something. There's real meaning behind it. And, when we're in meetings now, in operational meetings, teams are talking about specific elements and they're saying, oh, well, this actually doesn't meet Healthy Green School standards. So we need to think about how do we adjust this to meet it? Or, we're doing it this way because it does meet Healthy Green School standard. And, this is the impact that it has. So they've really bought into it, and it's really kind of given purpose, I think, to a lot of what they do.
Yeah. That's great. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me today. Who knows, maybe they'll create like a diamond certification for you guys if you keep on achieving gold. But I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to the Facilities in Focus podcast. Facilities in Focus is a product of the facility market, which houses FacilitiesNet, building operating management, facilities maintenance decisions, and healthcare facilities today. Thank you to our sound and video editor, Paul Ellertson. Thank you to Morgan Johnson for designing our logo. Thank you to Dan Welton, Dave Lubach, Dan Hounsell, Jeff Warden, Jill McDermott, and everyone else at Trade Press Media Group. For comments, or if you are interested in being a guest on Facilities in Focus, please email us at fnpodcast@tradepress.com.